Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most critical turning points in modern warfare. Ukraine's campaign to take back every inch of its land has reached a stage where even the most hardened analysts are beginning to admit something shocking: Russia's power may finally be breaking down from within. Since the full-scale invasion began, the world has watched Ukraine evolve from a country fighting for survival into a force capable of reshaping the entire balance of power in Eastern Europe. What once looked like an impossible defense has turned into a strategic counteroffensive that is both calculated and relentless. The Ukrainian army has learned fast. With Western technology, precise intelligence, and remarkable battlefield adaptation, they've pushed Russian forces into positions they never thought they'd be in. What's happening now isn't just a fight for territory, it's a war of exhaustion, and Russia is losing more each week. Let's start with the reality on the ground. Ukrainian forces have opened multiple pressure points across the front, from the Donetsk region to the Zaporizhzhia axis and the southern fronts leading toward Crimea. Each move is designed not to take massive ground overnight, but to break Russian logistics, command, and morale bit by bit. Western-supplied long-range systems like HIMARS, Storm Shadow, and ATACMS have changed the rules. Every Russian ammunition depot, every command post, every bridge connecting their supply routes is now within reach. The old Soviet style of mass and numbers simply doesn't work against precision warfare. And Russia's problem goes deeper than losses. It's the collapse of modern logistics. While Ukraine receives Western, standard weapons with satellite-backed coordination, Russian units are relying on outdated maps, unencrypted radios, and a chain of command paralyzed by fear. Generals are too afraid to report bad news, and soldiers are too exhausted to keep fighting. Ukraine's intelligence units have grown sharper too. Using drones, satellite imagery, and even captured Russian systems, they're mapping every inch of the battlefield. The days when Russia could hide convoys or surprise attacks are over. Ukraine strikes where it hurts the most: command centers, ammunition hubs, and fuel depots, all deep behind enemy lines. But the heart of Ukraine's strength isn't just technology, it's resolve. From Kharkiv to Kherson, from the trenches in the Donbas to the defenders of Odessa, Ukraine's fighters know exactly what they're fighting for: their homes, their families, their freedom. Russia's troops, on the other hand, are fighting for vague slogans, many against their will. One of the clearest signs of Russia's fading control is the increase in internal unrest. Reports of mutinies, desertions, and disobedience within Russian ranks have grown. Commanders are struggling to keep their soldiers motivated. In some cases, Russian units have refused to attack, choosing survival over orders. Meanwhile, Ukraine has turned intelligence warfare into an art. The use of small reconnaissance drones, deepfake operations, and psychological tactics have made Russian forces constantly paranoid. Even when there's no real attack, they're wasting ammunition and energy reacting to phantom threats. That is pure strategic efficiency. Economically, Russia is burning from within. Sanctions have choked its access to microchips, precision optics, and key materials needed for modern weapons. To compensate, Moscow is turning to North Korea and Iran, two nations that are themselves struggling under sanctions. The weapons they send are often outdated or unreliable. Ukraine, however, continues to receive steady streams of Western equipment. The difference in quality is becoming staggering. Modern air defense systems like NASAMS, IRIS-T, and Patriot batteries have turned Ukraine's skies into a fortress. Even Russia's hypersonic Kinzhal missiles, once thought unstoppable, have been intercepted. When we talk about winning back every inch, it's not just a slogan. Ukraine has already proven its capability in Kharkiv and Kherson, retaking vast areas that Russia claimed were forever part of their territory. Those victories weren't accidents. They were built through patience, data, and relentless counterattacks. The Crimean front is now under the spotlight. Ukraine has begun targeting Russian positions in and around Crimea with surgical precision. Bridges, air bases, radar sites, and supply nodes have been hit repeatedly. Each strike isolates Crimea further, making it more difficult for Russia to sustain its presence there. And then there's the psychological impact. Russia built its propaganda empire on the claim that its military was invincible, but every successful Ukrainian strike, every drone attack on a Russian city, every retreat exposes the cracks in that illusion. Even within Russia, people are starting to question the leadership's promises. Putin's system thrives on fear and silence, but when the losses become too big to hide, even fear starts to lose power. Russian state media can't mask the funerals, the destroyed convoys, and the endless mobilization drives. Ordinary Russians are realizing that this war, sold as a quick operation, has become a slow national disaster. Let's not underestimate how much Ukraine has changed militarily. In less than 3 years, it has transformed from a post-Soviet army into one of the most experienced modern forces in the world. Combat-hardened units, decentralized command structures, and NATO-level training have given Ukraine an edge that Russia cannot match, and the new wave of Western support keeps building. More armored vehicles, more air defense, more long-range weapons, and soon advanced fighter jets. F-16s will allow Ukraine to strike deeper, faster, and with greater accuracy than ever before. That single change could redefine the air war completely. Russia knows this. That's why its attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure are growing more desperate. They're trying to freeze cities, break morale, and exhaust Ukraine's energy supplies. But instead of surrendering, Ukrainians have adapted, rebuilding, rerouting, and keeping the lights on despite everything. That resilience terrifies the Kremlin. Even within the Russian elite, cracks are visible. Power struggles between the defense ministry, private military groups, and regional governors are destabilizing command coordination. The aftermath of the Wagner mutiny proved that loyalty inside Russia's system is based on fear, not conviction. Once that fear fades, collapse is inevitable. On the battlefield, Ukraine's counteroffensive strategy is working like clockwork. Instead of rushing head on into fortified lines, they're systematically destroying Russia's rear positions, forcing them to stretch their defenses thin. Every destroyed depot, every severed rail line, and every targeted radar weakens Russia's grip a little more. It's also important to note how global dynamics are shifting. Countries once hesitant to support Ukraine are now realizing that Russian aggression threatens everyone. NATO expansion into Finland and Sweden is proof of that. The alliance is stronger than ever, and that's a direct consequence of Russia's failed gamble. Ukraine's intelligence successes inside Russia itself are equally remarkable. Sabotage operations, explosions at military factories, and drone strikes on airbases deep inside Russian territory show that Ukraine can hit anywhere. Moscow is no longer untouchable, and that changes everything. Each strike not only damages material assets, it shatters Russian morale. Soldiers on the front lines hear about explosions in Moscow and start questioning whether their leaders can protect them at all. The psychological cost is enormous, and it's eating away at Russia's will to fight. Meanwhile, Ukraine's partnerships with Western industries are growing. Defense manufacturers in Europe and the US are setting up joint production lines in Ukraine itself. This means that even under fire, Ukraine will soon be producing advanced drones, missiles, and armored vehicles domestically. Russia cannot keep up with that level of modernization. One of the most underestimated aspects of this war is Ukraine's information warfare. From exposing Russian propaganda to broadcasting battlefield realities in real time, Ukraine controls the global narrative. It's no longer Moscow dictating the story, it's Kiev setting the tone, and that shift matters more than most realize. And as Russia burns through resources, it's becoming clearer that they cannot sustain this war indefinitely. Every tank they lose, every missile they fire, every aircraft they send takes months or years to replace. Ukraine, backed by dozens of nations, can replenish far faster. The Russian economy is deteriorating under pressure. The ruble has collapsed multiple times, industries are shutting down, and skilled workers are fleeing the country. Corruption inside the defense sector means money vanishes before it reaches the troops. That's why soldiers on the front still fight with outdated gear and poor rations. For Ukraine, every hardship is turned into strength. Despite blackouts, missile barrages, and constant bombardment, the population's support for the military remains near total. The unity of purpose across the country is something Russia has never been able to replicate. Russia's so-called special military operation has instead become a symbol of global isolation. Once, Moscow boasted about military modernization and strategic dominance. Now, it's reduced to begging pariah states for drones and artillery shells. That is the measure of how far the mighty have fallen. Ukraine's strategy of patience is paying off. By avoiding reckless advances and focusing on attrition, it's making Russia bleed without overstretching itself. Every month that passes, the balance shifts further toward Ukraine. Western intelligence now believes that Russia's combat-ready reserves are nearly exhausted. Many of their so-called new divisions are built from poorly trained conscripts and old equipment pulled from storage. These are not the armies of 2014 or 2022, these are shadows of a broken machine. Meanwhile, Ukraine's troops are returning from Western training centers sharper and more coordinated than ever. Combined arms operations, precision strikes, and integrated drone tactics are now standard practice. In contrast, Russia's tactics remain outdated, relying on human waves and artillery barrages that achieve little more than massive losses. If the trend continues, experts believe Ukraine could liberate significant territory within the next campaign season. The long-term plan isn't just to win battles, it's to make occupation impossible. To make every Russian soldier understand that staying in Ukraine means certain defeat. That's why we're seeing such fierce resistance from Russia's leadership. They know that once Ukraine regains full control of its borders, Putin's myth of power will collapse. His entire regime is built on the illusion of strength, and losing this war would shatter it completely. Even the Russian public is beginning to sense it. For the first time, polls show growing frustration, fatigue, and distrust. Thousands of families have lost relatives, and many still don't know where their sons are buried. Censorship can't hide that forever. The Ukrainian victory will not come overnight, but it is inevitable. Every liberated town, every destroyed Russian column, every retreating soldier brings that moment closer. Russia can throw more men into the fire, but each attempt burns what little strength it has left, and that's what this war has become, a battle of endurance between freedom and imperial delusion. Ukraine's willpower has already outlasted Russia's expectations, outsmarted its generals, and outmaneuvered its forces. When history looks back, it will see this not just as a military victory, but as a moral one. Ukraine's defiance has inspired nations across the world to stand up to tyranny. It has proven that courage, technology, and unity can overcome even the most brutal aggression. As we look ahead, one thing is clear: Ukraine will not stop until every inch of its territory is free. Crimea, Donetsk, Luhansk, all of it will come home. The question now is not whether Ukraine can win, but how long Russia can keep burning before it collapses entirely. So as the fires of war continue, remember this: the tide has turned. Ukraine fights with purpose, with allies, and with time on its side. Russia fights with fear, isolation, and denial. In wars like this, that difference decides everything. And when it's over, when the final Russian tank rolls out of Ukrainian land, the world will know that a smaller nation stood against a giant and won not just with weapons, but with unwavering spirit and absolute determination. Ukraine will win back every inch, and Russia will burn trying to stop it.